All right, so I'm Cindy Hain. I am the product manager for logistics for Elimica. And what I wanted to talk about today is some data analysis that I've done based on the shipments that are transacting through our network today. So first, though, I want to set the stage a little bit. I want to give you kind of my overview of how I consider Elimica's supply chain operating network for logistics. And I want to talk to you about what kinds of things that we can do with the data in these millions of shipments. So I'm going to give you some specific use cases that I'll be building solutions towards as we gain critical mass in our 2.0 network, right? And then we'll get into the analytics that I've gathered and some of my lessons learned from doing that. So looking at several different statistics there. So what do I mean when I say supply chain operating network for logistics? We've been talking to you about supply chain operating networks for a couple of years now. And just as a reminder, what we mean by that is the B2B integration layer that we're so well known for, the applications that we provide that provide you collaboration capabilities and visibility to your trading partners, and then the analytics. And so what I'm going to share today is really kind of in that third category. It's the analytics. But what I want you to also consider is the value of the supply chain operating network is in that it is an ecosystem. And so the value is in the data that you are creating with your partners in that ecosystem. And specifically want to give you some examples of what we mean by that to try to really kind of bring it home to you. So logistics management at Elimica, we are growing. We're growing at a fairly good clip. I'll show you the volumes later. We currently have, over 1,500 carrier connections. We're doing 3.8 million shipments annually, which is probably a little understated, in part because it's difficult for me to estimate some of the data that goes through parts of the solution. But we can tell that we are transacting about more than 50% of the messages we transact are logistics related. So they are a lot of shipment status messages. So for any particular shipment, you could have as many as 7 or 8 status messages. So all the bookings, the confirmations, the load tender motors, and then all the status messages associated with that. You might not be aware, if you use our solutions, you may only be aware of the 1 or 2 that you're using, but this is the full suite of our logistics solutions. We offer the transport execution solutions that are really about helping you automate the booking of your shipments, but also keeping sure that you have the visibility through execution on those shipments. We offer time slot management for carrier appointment booking that Michael mentioned earlier that they are using. We offer freight cost management solutions that are actually quite unique in that it provides a platform for collaborating with your carriers on the accessorial costs or the extra costs associated with the shipment, so that you can pretty much eliminate any auditing that you're doing after the fact, because you're doing that throughout the execution. Terminal and warehouse visibility for collaborating with your third-party warehouse providers. And then the long lead time shipments, the ocean shipments are really more applicable for the global shipment visibility and ocean transport solution. And we are providing, that's actually the solution that also Michael mentioned earlier, that's the one that they are using. So we're providing that visibility. Looking ahead as far as themes for the kinds of solutions that I'll be looking at building, it really is about, given our supply chain operating network technical capabilities, to get data that's different than just the standard EDI message or XML message. I'm looking at traditional, non-traditional connectivity options. I'm looking at things like, can I get vessel statuses from the vessel tracker solution that's available with the AIS data? I was talking earlier today about, can I get data feeds from onboard computers or new smartphone tracking systems that many of my carriers are looking to implement or have implemented. So can I get non-traditional data feeds so that I can use that information to increase data quality, reduce latency, et cetera. What we're going to talk about a lot today is the content-oriented themes. Again, I want you to think about you're part of this ecosystem. And as you heard Dr. Sheffy say in the video earlier about the network effect, every point that's added to the network adds value to everyone in the network. And so think about just the When we get that, when we have that, we have critical mass now for logistics data in the process and chemical industries, right? And we can only build on that with more and more data that you can provide us, and I'm going to give you some of those examples. But we'll also continue to look at solutions that really focus on that. How can you better collaborate with your carriers? So how do you share and other logistics service providers? Sharing network data, for example. We'll continue to look at those areas where connectivity and collaboration are key to helping you improve your business. Obviously looking at some ways to make data visual and mobile, so to help you there. And then again, starting to look more and more at how I can address the LSP side of our network, because I want to make sure they're well taken care of. I want to make sure that they see value in the solution, and I want to get connected to every one of them proactively so that you don't have to, that when you come to our network, you're going to be guaranteed to have those connections available already. So those are the kinds of things that we're looking at. So what do I mean when I say analytics? Here's some specific use cases that hopefully will spark some ideas in your mind. So let's start with the shipment updates. So updates to the estimated times of arrival and departure. Let's say, for example, that you're transacting in our network, and say that I could give you in an automated way, so with some sort of robot component, some automated component, I can tell you, hey, you know what, you just sent me a shipment. The estimated time of arrival that you have on this shipment is unreasonable based on the history that I can see. And I can not only do that, not just looking at your past shipments, but I can do that based on the critical mass of all the shipments in my network. So that's a very specific example of how I can help improve the quality of the visibility data that you're getting by providing you better information based on the shipments that we already have. Rich mentioned this earlier, and Michael also talked about it, and that's the risk management area. So I wanted to give you a kind of a specific example of how important it is to have any risk management solution that you have needs to be integrated with a solution like the supply chain operating network, because we can combine the transactional data with the risk data to help identify what you need to do. So it's there's the social listening types of components that Rich and et cetera mentioned. So understanding a news feed and making sense of that and figuring out what that means in terms of severity. For example, a port strike. But there's the real money comes from us being able to say, I see this port strike, I know where it is, and look at all this transactional data that I have of yours. Let me first and foremost find the shipments that are headed towards that port and alert you to make sure you know that that's going on. So those are the kinds of things that we can provide. So and you can use that information not only to identify potential risks, but figure out what to do about it. You can use the information in the network to do that as well. So that's another example, another use case of how we might use this data. So this one's really interesting too, and there's several examples here, but I'm going to start with just a silly example, and I call them scan bots. That's my word for like a little robot component, right? So think about if you are transacting, all of your shipments. I've also got all the rest of the industry shipments in my network, and I can tell you, hey, you know what? I can see, my little robot can tell you, I can see that you're only getting proof of delivery for 30% of your shipments. That's lower than I'm seeing in the rest of my network. I can give you a list of carriers who can provide you proof of delivery that have much higher success rates in providing proof of delivery. Would you like to see that report? So what carrier wouldn't want to be on that report, right? So this is another way that we can continue to drive more value by more value from the ecosystem by having more data and being able to do something and analyzing that data and proactively doing something about it. So that's suggesting implementation improvements. You've already got the solution, it's already done, but the data quality is not there, and I can show you, in an automated way, I can suggest to you that you need to take a look at this. So another thing, shipment optimization. We don't do much of this now. There just hasn't been that much opportunity in the process industries. You'll see why when I show you the statistics that, most of the shipments that we see are bulk shipments, not having a lot of opportunity for optimization, but maybe from a continuous move perspective. And so having the shipments across the network, I can tell which ones are going this way, which ones are going this way, and possibly help to lower your transportation costs by providing those backhaul opportunities for the carriers. A little bit further reaching, I think. Maybe what might be more achievable are use cases around the assets. So if I've got all of your carriers connected and I see all of your shipments, then I know where those assets have been, and I can tell you what the priors were on any particular truck that's been assigned to your shipment, because I also saw that truck in the last time they moved a shipment. So I can help with things like that in terms of tank cleaning compliance and history and maintenance. So offering, possibly also offering value to the carriers as well to provide that information in one place and make that available for the community. And then another, idea, maybe a little bit further out, but thinking about, I see you're shipping a lot from here to here. Have you thought about positioning some inventory there? Here's some third-party warehouse providers that have facilities in that area, things like that. Hey, you know what? I see that you're doing a lot of stock transfer orders. Maybe you need to reevaluate what your distribution requirements planning is looking like. So do those things make sense, those use cases? And then lastly, as far as how we might use the value of the network data is around benchmarking. And so think about, in any of my applications, for any data element, if you could click a button and it say, hey, you know what, here's your shipment, this is your lead time, but in your network, your average lead time is this. In all of Alimica's network, your average lead time is that, right? So being able to do that on a transaction by transaction basis would be pretty powerful. But what's that going to require? First, it requires statistically, some very specific things statistically before we could provide you that kind of benchmark. So critical mass, obviously. I think if you remember your statistics, you need at least 100 data points. And, because of what constitutes a data point, that would, relate to probably thousands and thousands of shipments on a particular lane. And I would need to make sure that, if you're going to sign up for that kind of benchmarking, we've got to be very careful about protecting the data, right? And so, for an example, I might not provide any benchmarking information across my network if I don't have data from at least 3 different shippers, and no one shipper can constitute at least, more than 40% of each lane, right? If it doesn't pass those types of criteria, then you would only see your network benchmark, you wouldn't see the whole network benchmark. But that wouldn't be as valuable. So the more critical mass we have, the more of these kinds of things we can do. All right, so now it's into the data part. So hopefully, I just want to give you a little bit of background on how we went about analyzing these components. We have data from all the way back to 2011, and in different levels. In some data sets we only had from 2014. But it constitutes about 5 million shipments that we looked at. We were able to get it down to country lanes. And we did some statistical analysis, but I'm not going to lie to you and say it was that rigorous, right? I didn't do any distributions and 95% confidence intervals and the kinds of things that I would do if I were offering these in an automated way. So we just did some percentages and some averages. And to that last point, I didn't put any, in very rare cases you'll see any particular numbers, right? So I'm just, without doing the assessment to make sure that I had enough data across enough shippers, I'm just giving you some kind of orders of magnitude here today. So hopefully that makes sense. All right, so the first one I looked at was what I call network strength. And overall, these numbers look kind of low, but if you look at just at the top LSPs, there's quite a bit of strength. And what I consider strength is how many different shipper connections does each LSP have, right? So how much of my network effect am I getting? And so Europe is doing quite a bit better than North America in this regard, and you'll see why when you look at the carrier distribution. So I'd say the top carriers, and I've got them shown here. These are the LSPs that cross the region. So those are LSPs that will do business in multiple regions, and they also happen to be the LSPs that have the highest number of different shipper customers on us. But like I said, Europe's a little bit stronger here, with the top having like 11 and 12 shipper customers connected to them through our network. This is volume growth from the last 3.5 years, so that's since October 2011. We've experienced 34% growth, and then just looking at the last 15 months, a more modest 13% growth, and that has been driven by, we've got some new projects in Asia, so we're building a carrier community there that we didn't have previously, and then some modest growth in our transaction volumes in Europe and North America. As far as our geographic distribution, this one actually surprised me because I feel like I do more business in Europe for logistics than I do, but we've got some very high volumes of data going through for, you'll see one particular carrier and one, I think it's just one connection in North America. The top lanes in in Europe are probably the usual suspects, kind of what you would have expected, right? So top carriers, like I said, there's one carrier that kind of skews the whole network, and they're in North America. You can see that's Menlo. And then in Europe, it's a much, kind of a little bit smoother distribution there. Those are my top LSPs. You'll see again, the usual suspects there. And then the top LSPs for North America. And, one of the things I can envision doing is, a lot of times when I'm talking to customers, maybe new customers that don't yet have a connection to us for logistics, one of the first things they'll ask is, hey, can I see your list of carriers? Well, this is also the kind of thing that you should be able to go and take a look at yourself on our, through our partner discovery. So I want to also look at being able to provide these kinds of statistics and post them to a wall somewhere as part of the profile for that carrier, assuming that they have chosen to do that. All right, so shipment profiles, I mentioned this earlier. So this is sort of just to show you the dichotomy. So on the left-hand side is the type of shipment that we can handle. So our systems can handle quite complex multi-stop, interspersed pickup and delivery, multiple delivery notes, multiple products. Our system is structured to handle that. By contrast, 99% of the shipments we get are single pickup, single delivery. 86% only have one product on them. And this is more of an estimate, but we estimate about 80% are bulk and 20% are packed goods. So still very strongly bulk environment, single product environment. All right, and so the next slide, if I can make this thing work. Okay. This one is, we're going to do a little quiz show on, just to see what you think here. So this represents the time data that we track for each shipment. So for both pickup and delivery, we track the requested, the estimated, and the actual. And so what I did was to look to see what is our performance, what performance are we seeing on performance to the requested and performance to the estimated for both pickups and delivery. So my first quiz question is, what do you think the late percentage is for pickup to performance to requested? Any ideas? Any guesses? What percentage late to performance? Say again? 20% late? 25% late? 5% late. Okay. You guys are very optimistic. Does anybody else have a pessimistic guess? 60. All right. Who said 60? All right, Jens. Okay. Are you ready for it? So 69% late, according to this data. Right, so there's still some work to be done, and I'll show you a caveat in a bit. But according to my data, 69% of the shipments are actually picked up after the requested date. It gets a little better when you look at estimated, which makes some sense, right? Because the estimated should come from the carrier. And then on the delivery side, any guess on the deliveries? Yeah, not great, but at least in terms of the actual or performance to estimated, we're down to a more reasonable number. Now, one of the things I'd have to, caveat to this is, and you'll see it on my next slide. How about if I just look at it now? On particularly shipment lead times, I only was able to glean information from 21% of the shipments. For performance to requested times, it was much worse. So this is probably the reason for such a bleak picture previously. Right, so what this tells me is that for only 8% of the millions of shipments in my system, do I actually have the data to compare actual pickup to requested pickup, right? That means that I don't get that data from any more than 8% of my shipments. So I've got the ability to track the data, but I'm not getting the data. And it gets, it's equally as bleak on the pickup and on the delivery side as well, right? So one of the things that many of my customers are asking me, and I'm sure several of you in the room are in the same boat, is, we have this system to track on-time performance, but I don't get the data from my LSPs in order to be able to track it. And then the ones that do get 100%, that is usually some combination of electronic messages or manual entry into the portal. And so going back to my statement earlier, why it's so important for us to be able to provide you with some way, with alternative ways of gathering that data. So I'm working with carriers now to try to figure out how can we fix this problem, because that's the reason that my customers say, hey, you know what, why is this system going to be any different from all the other ones I tried? And the quality always stinks, and so it's not working for me. And so our ability to take data in different ways, in different formats, and make it usable data by enriching it in our B2B integration layer is going to positively impact that. And so I'm encouraged and working with several customers on projects to try to solve this problem for us and for the network.
Isn't there a logic problem? Because we don't give you the actual pickup, but we know the actual pickup.
Well, that's another excellent point. You know the actual, yes. Mm-hmm. This is my, right. So I can't do analytics on it if you don't give it to me. And of course you know the actual, that's your facility. Now, I could give you better and easier ways to give me that data. Like I could give you a mobile application that you could use, except in some cases I've heard you can't have mobile phones on some of the facilities. I could give you a simpler way for your loading operators to provide that data, right? But yes, it's very possible that this is just skewed because I don't get the data, but you actually have the data. But on the delivery side, the way you get that data is usually through me. So those statistics are pretty bleak on that point. Shipment costs. So this is one where I don't put the actual numbers, but so what do you expect of, if you consider the cost of a shipment to be your base rate plus your accessorials, any guesses on what's what you've spent the most on? So of all those costs across all those shipments totaled up, what are you spending the most on, do you think? Demurrage? Did you say heating?
Heating.
Fuel? Actually don't have a lot on fuel. So heating wins. Heat treating, cleaning, and demurrage. 1, 2, and 3. Yeah. And then if you look at it on average, what's the average cost? So this is the amount you're spending totaled up over all the shipments. But like more what you would negotiate with your carrier, the average cost, what do you think the biggest would be? Any ideas? So the average cost, you can't see that, but layovers. So your negotiated rates for accessorials with your carriers, the highest is layovers, followed by the base rate. Cancellations was surprising, but I guess you're spending just as much on canceling a shipment as you did in the base rate of the shipment. New. So yeah, so another example, you know, costs are a little tricky because again, as far as benchmarking, we'd have to be very careful and very cautious about that, but it's still something that's very doable. There are ways that we can do this to actually create an equation for you to be able to predict what your costs would be by using the data in the network, right? So that's all very possible. Another thing, this is, and my time is up and I'm between you guys and cocktails, so try to speed up a little bit. We also track events, so what's happening on the shipment, and these are specifically the ECTA codes that we get. And so the majority of the ECTA codes we get are based on date and time types. But look at this, the data here is also kind of questionable in that we see the reason for the event is by and large available upon request, so which is not very helpful for you. So some ability to maybe re-optimize. All right, so lessons learned here in this activity. So first off is the data quality problem, right? I mean, we have the ability to take the data from you or from your partners, and if there's a systemic way for us to enrich it so it's usable to you and analyzable, we can do that in our network. So that's one way that we can improve data quality. And it's obvious from me doing this exercise that there's some work that needs to be done to improve the quality in our network, right? The computational power, this exceeded my laptop. So this is not something that you really want people doing, right? This is something you want to have a system in the supply chain operating network that has the computational power for it to be able to automatically assess these things and provide you insights in real time, right? Probably the biggest two for you guys as far as customers of mine is this, what I'm starting to talk to more and more customers about is the opportunity to optimize the system you're already using. So why is it that you don't give me the actual load times? Can we work on a program that you could give me those actual load times? How can I help you give me those actual load times? How can your carrier community, how can we pull them in and work on the collectively work as an industry on improving the ability for them to give us that data? So some ideas there for how we might work together in the future. And then there's certainly opportunities for new type of data. So if you don't currently send me shipment cost information, if you started sending me shipment cost information, then I could start doing analytics for you on your shipment costs. So those are kinds of things that, if you're already sending me shipments, you're just not putting the cost information on there. Well, there's lots more data that I can accept than maybe you're sending me. And if you send me that data, I can do something with it. So that's it for me. My time's up, but if you guys have a few questions, I'm around. I'm happy to answer them now or over a cocktail if that's what you want. Anything?